Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is a series of webinars that We Are the City, We Are Virtual, We Are the City are putting on since lockdown, which is really exciting and a wonderful, wonderful and very thoughtful thing for them to do. They reached out to their community and asked who was prepared to pay it forward. And so many people have responded. It's been really exciting, and I feel very privileged that they were interested in having me speak as well. So my name is Terri Duhon, and with that, I'm going to start. But before I start, I'm going to just start with a quick wellness message. I do hope that everyone is well and healthy, and I appreciate what incredibly stressful times this has been. And you know, I'm not going to pretend that life before coronavirus was mental health nirvana by any means, but at least for me, I felt that I had a routine and I had coping mechanisms. And now it just seems to change all the time, and it makes it just a little more challenging to find my stride. And so I haven't found it easy either. I have 3 kids at home, and homeschooling is shocking, and frankly, I'm a failure at that, and it's been really hard. I have a completely crazy dog, and who's sitting behind me now, and who knows what he may do during this webinar. So just prepare yourself. The numbers are still going up, so I'm going to give it just another second, actually, and you know, not only do we have the coronavirus, but we also have what's going on in the US and Hong Kong. And these are incredibly challenging times for a lot of people, both physically and mentally. And we have to, you know, be aware that particularly when we talk about things like career management, taking ownership, which is what we're about to talk about, it takes energy and it takes headspace. And sometimes you have to give yourself a break. So please, don't put too much pressure on yourself, and do the right thing for you as well as, you know, everyone else. But sometimes you have to make sure and put yourself first. So I'm going to go ahead and start now. I think we're right on time. So thank you everyone for joining us. So today, if I can move forward, I'm going to be talking about empowering you and your career. And that is all about taking ownership. And I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy and excited to hear people's stories and what's going on. And I get requests for advice, and to the extent that I can give it, then I'm happy to do it. And so I look forward to hearing from as many of you who are interested. Always happy to connect. So let me tell you a little bit about our journey today. We're going to start. I'm going to talk to you just briefly about my life path. Not very much on that. Most important is why you need to take ownership. And if you understand that, then it will drive you forward and make sure that you are always thinking about the steps you need to take to move yourself forward in your own career and in your own purpose. We're going to talk about strategic decision-making and how to do it. Embracing failure, the most important piece here, because you've got to take some risk along the way. And then how to improve your impact. So I'm going to start with a quote from Lewis Hamilton. I hope you know who he is. He is considered by some to be one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time. And his quote is, "I don't aspire to be like other drivers. I aspire to be unique in my own way." And this quote resonates with me so much because my own path has been so nonlinear and non-traditional, and it's my own. And people will say things like, "Oh, you should do it this way," or "That's not how it's done," or "Well, you'll never get there like that." And frankly, you know, it's all well-meaning, but it may not be relevant for you. And you have to know what's inside, and you have to forge your own path. The only right path is the one that's right for you, and you're the only one that knows it. So don't deviate from the path that you know is right for you. Know yourself, and you'll be on the right path. My own path, just to background, I'm sure you can hear I'm American. I grew up in Louisiana, very rural Louisiana. I studied math at MIT. My first career, I call it my big corporate career, it was 10 years on the trading floor. I started off as a derivatives trader at JP Morgan on Wall Street. And what I learned about myself is that after about 8 years, I get really bored, and then I spend the next 2 years trying to figure out what to do. So my career is broken up into 10-year chunks. And so the first 10 years is my big corporate. the second 10 years, I became an entrepreneur and I started a few businesses. One pretty successful, still continues today, one a shocking failure, and one, well, it's another story. There's always stories behind entrepreneurs. But again, I knew myself, and I knew that after 10 years, I'd be looking for something new. And so to prepare myself for what I decided my third career was going to be, I sat on a few charity committees and I sat on a charity board. And then my third career, which I'm in the middle of, I'm 5 years in, so you can work out my age from that, 25 years from graduation. My third career is what I call my portfolio career, where I sit on boards, I lecture. I'm on the board of Morgan Stanley International. I chair the risk committee. I'm on the board of Rathbone Brothers, a FTSE 250, where I also chair the risk committee. I sit on the visiting committee for the MIT math department. That's super interesting and exciting. I'm an associate fellow at Oxford. I've written a book called How the Trading Floor Really Works. It's a bestseller, like 50 Shades of Grey. You can imagine it's riveting. And I have a lot of fun. And my fourth career, I don't know what that is yet, because, there will be a fourth and a fifth and a sixth. And, why retire if I'm having fun? And I'm having fun as long as I'm learning, as long as I'm intellectually stimulated, as long as I'm engaged, as long as I'm in charge of where I'm going. And that's what I want you to be too. And the key to taking ownership is to understand why. And point one, no one else knows your hopes, your dreams, your future potential. That rests with you. Maybe your mother might know, but really it rests inside you. So no one else knows. You're the only one that knows where you're headed. Organizations behave a certain way, and it is just a fact. And as good as organizations want to be with respect to their employees, they often start by saying, what's the right structure for this organization? And then they turn and say, now what people do we have to fill those slots? They don't start by saying, what's right for Anne? And then how can we structure the organization around Anne? That's not how they do it. And so it's important to understand that, what they suggest that might be right for you, because it is right for the organization, may not be right for you. And so you need to be thinking about that. And next, not everyone can manage. And these are linked because, we have historically, particularly in finance, not promoted people because of their management skills. We've promoted them for all sorts of other skills. And what that means is that very few people have great managerial or great leadership skills. And, you're not born with those. You have to learn them. And if we're not promoting them, if we're not teaching them, if we're not encouraging them, then people don't have them. And what that means is that if you don't have a great manager, you have to manage yourself. And so if you have a path, you have somewhere you want to go, you need to figure out how to get yourself there. And you have to tell people, because if you don't tell people where you're trying to go, then when they're doing that little org chart and they're saying, well, who can we fit in these slots? They may have something that might suit you perfectly, but if you haven't told anyone you'd like to be there, they're not going to consider you for that option, possibly. So you've got to manage it yourself. And finally, when you realize, and it took me a while to do this, I was pretty angry for a little while on the trading floor. When you realize you have to be in charge, it takes away some of the angst and frustration around your manager and your organization. And you stop being mad at them for you not moving forward, because actually what you realize is it's in your hands. And it generally makes for a much better work environment. That's what I've found, certainly. I've gotten over the anger when I realized that it was up to me to make those decisions and to push myself forward. So now onto the strategic part. Now, if you understand you have to take ownership, now the key is, what's the strategy behind it? My biggest piece of advice here is dream big. Now, this is a very terrible picture of MIT. But when I was at MIT, there were these amazing students. Everybody seemed to be smarter than me, frankly. Everybody. It was incredible what geniuses everybody around me were. It's a tough on the ego, I can tell you. But when I was there were loads of students around me who had such clear dreams. And there was the pre-med student who was going to go and become a brain surgeon, the pre-law student who was going to go and sit on the Supreme Court, the engineer who was going to design race cars. they had such clarity, and I just didn't have that. And my big dream, and still even today, I say, you know, after all the things I've done, I still say to myself, when I grow up, I'm going to do something big. I'm going to do something amazing, and I'm going to change the world. And look, it's so vague, right? But what I'm trying to say is, I still have that dream. And it's okay if your dream is not specific. It's okay if it's big, if it's vague. The key, what's not okay, if it's not big enough, right? Are you achieving your potential? Are you dreaming big enough? We all have to have big dreams. And I encourage you to just challenge yourself. Are you dreaming big enough? Because what's the point being alive, right? If you don't at least try to do something amazing. However, with these very vague dreams, sometimes we have a challenge, which is how do we make steps forward? And for me, I think that every step you take, you need to maximize your future opportunities. That's been my goal, which means to me, balance the give and the take. And what that means is every job, every opportunity I think about, I think I want to add value, yes, on day one, but I want to learn along the way. So if all I'm doing is adding value and I'm not really learning, then I haven't given something to me. Then all I've done is I've given to the job. And so there's a gender point here, which is really important to understand. And there's research around it, and I'm going to exaggerate, so apologize. I like exaggeration. I think it makes a better story. But when there are 10 things you need to tick for a job application, women often don't apply until they can tick all 10. And maybe they'll tick 9 and then worry about that last box that they didn't tick. And men will tick 1 box and fist bump each other about how amazing they are and go in and just get it. And the key here is that I think ticking 1 box is pretty risky, but hey, take risks when you can. I think ticking 9 boxes or even 10, and frankly, any more than 5 is too many, because you need to add something to you, right? What are you going to learn? If you can already do the job, I almost ask, what's the point? And for me, I want to add on day one. So I want to tick 2 or 3 boxes so that I can really show value on day one. But I don't want to tick all the boxes because I need to learn, right? We all need to learn. Remember, every future step, the future, who knows what job we're going to be doing in the future. Technology is increasing so much today. The job you're doing today may not exist in 5 years' time. We all need to upskill. And so you're always looking for those opportunities to upskill. And that's how I think about making next steps. Here's a little thought exercise for you. I'm not asking you to write it down or tell your friends or put it on social media, but I'm asking you to be honest with yourself. The first question is your dream big enough? The second is, what is it? And I've told you what mine is already. I've bared my heart and soul here. And let me just go back for a second. When I told you what my dream was, I found that really hard to tell people in the past. It does feel like taking a risk. It's scary. What if they laugh? I say it now all the time. I tell people I'm going to change the world. I want to do something amazing. I'm going to do something big. And you know what? If they laugh, so what? But it is my dream and it is my goal. But I also have some medium and short-term goals. And I'd like to sit, for example, on a FTSE 100 board. I'd like to sit on an S&P board. I'd like to give a TED Talk. I'd like to be invited to Davos. Why not? I'd like to, give more paid talks. I think they're a lot of fun, but I'd like to be paid for it because it shows that I'm being valued. And short-term goals, they can be a little shorter than your medium-term goals. They can be specific to your current role or just specific to where you are right in this moment. And so you're just thinking, how can I move myself forward right now? And for me, that is doing more talks, doing better at being a non-executive and gaining skills and listening to feedback and doing better at chairing my risk committees and just improving my skill set every day, just a little bit. And then what are your life or learning goals? Again, you have to have them. We need to be lifelong learners because the world is changing at such a rapid pace. And we need to be prepared to take those changes and embrace them as opposed to be afraid of them. Now, here's the thing. Fear of failure. Let's go to J.M. Barrie. He says, he's the author of Peter Pan, by the way. And he says, we're all failures. At least the best of us are. I believe this so much because when you listened to my bio that I gave at the beginning, I talked about all the highs. And the truth is that when most people talk about their bio, they tell you about the highs because that's what they're proud of. That's what they're excited about. I find it a little misleading though, because the truth is we all have some lows, and I mean some real lows. And, you know, I was fired. I mean, my first interview for Wall Street was appalling to the point that I was kicked out of the room within 15 minutes, long line of MIT students waiting to do their interview. Story went around the whole university. It actually came back to me. Oh, did you hear about that girl that was kicked out of the interview for so-and-so and so? And I was like, yeah, I heard that story. I mean, we all have just epic fails. You know, when I was first starting my business, some of the just silly things I did, you know, the conversations I've had where people laughed, it happens. You know what? It happens. And thank God, because every failure is your best opportunity to learn. I wouldn't have achieved my highs without the lows. The lows are what got me to my highs. And this quote sums it up so well. So let me tell you a few. Leaving the establishment. There is something unbelievably, it's like religion. You know, corporates have this idea that there's nothing outside. You're so lucky to be here. And there's no other job other than this. And when I first decided to become an entrepreneur, the number of people who said, what are you doing? You're leaving a great job. What are you doing? You're out of your mind. Why are you doing this? I mean, again, I think it was well-intentioned, but man, it scared me because it just sounded like, you know, everybody just thought I was going to fail. And, you know, it was like there was nothing outside of being in a big corporate. The only thing that the only life that existed, the only work to ever do was to sit in one of these big organizations. And the truth is, it wasn't for me at all. You know, on day one, I knew it wasn't for me. There was a guy and he had a watch, and amazing. He was an MD. He was a wonderful guy. And he gave a presentation to the analyst class. And he had been at JP Morgan for 25 years. And he showed us the watch he had gotten for 25 years. I was 22. I started hyperventilating. He was at JP Morgan in one place for longer than I had been alive. And he had a watch to show for it. And I thought, oh, this is not my path. Now, ultimately, I stayed 10 years. But at the end of 10 years, I was done. And I needed to do my own thing. And I took that risk, and it was scary. It was scary as hell. And I'm so glad I did, because it put me on the path that I'm on now. And it's the path I love and I want to be on, because it's my own path. Knocking on the Oxford door. At some point, years ago, we moved out to Oxford for family reasons. Didn't enjoy it very much. But when we were there, I thought, you know what? I'm going to go and talk to the Said School, and I'm going to tell them that I've been running a bunch of analyst and associate programs for all the big banks globally, you know, London, New York, Hong Kong, Tokyo, KL, and I've been designing these programs and giving some of the training. And, you know, I've noticed that a lot of the MBA students just don't come with a lot of financial markets experience, and I can teach that. And I rocked up, and honestly, they laughed, literally laughed. I wasn't a PhD. At that point, I wasn't published. I was not an academic. You know, what in the world was I talking to them about? I wasn't using the right vocabulary. And it, three years later, and many, I can't tell you how many conversations later, I finally got a phone call. Now, at this point, I'd already moved back to London. So now we're talking about a commute. So I had already moved back to London, and I got a phone call, and it was, Terri, you know, we've got this great idea. We'd like you to come in and give this course. And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I'd love to do it. Thank you. I was excited. And, you know, a few years later, I became an associate fellow, and I still do loads with them, and I love it. And I'm so excited about it. But I had to knock on that door so many times. So just don't give up, because it's there. Your dream is achievable. It's always achievable. Every no is an opportunity to learn and get you closer to a yes. Now, the hardest thing I ever did was getting to the boardroom. It's a very non-traditional path for me. And, you know, the thing about non-traditional paths is that people don't know they don't understand you, right? They're looking for the traditional pathways, because that's what they can understand, and that's what they've seen before, that's what they understand, and that's how they can interview well, and everybody else is, you know, is a struggle. And traditional pathway to the boardroom is you work your way up the corporate ladder, and then you eventually get asked to present to the board, and then you're asked to sit on the board or sit on committees, chair committees, sit on the board, and then eventually you're asked to sit on another board. And it's really exciting times, but I didn't do that. I only spent 10 years, in a corporate on a trading floor, and I wasn't working my way up the ladder. And then I became an entrepreneur. So I thought, look, I'm strategic. I really understand finance. I'm an expert. And I've sat on some charity boards. I've got this, right? And man, no, I did not. I didn't have the right vocabulary. I wasn't using the right language. I wasn't even dressing properly. People, literally, I got some feedback once, which was, you just don't look executive. You don't look executive enough. It's good feedback. It helped me though, because I realized people judge. They shouldn't, but they do. And so, it took me a long time. I had some difficult, really horrible periods where I just thought, it just was all down. And I remember one day I was walking down the street. I just dropped my kids off at school. It was raining, as it does in England. And I just thought, you know what, I just got another no. And I just thought, this is never going to happen. And I just need to give up. And I phoned a friend and I said, Susan, I'm banging my head against a wall. I've gotten another no. Do you think I can do this? I mean, is this really something? Why am I doing this? And she said, Terri, you're amazing. You can do this. I know you can. Don't give up. And, sometimes we just need that support from friends and family to just say, you got this. And, that's why we're not alone on these journeys. We need people with us. And reach out when you need it. Don't sit around and, don't let yourself wallow. Really reach out. Find those people who are supportive. Now, I believe, because I've had these tough paths, these big nonlinear moves, I believe you're not a function of your past experiences, education, jobs. You're a function of your future potential. The key is you've got to get people to see your future potential, right? And here's some tricks, how to see your future potential. We've talked about dressing for success. People judge. It's crazy, but they do. Dress for success. Using the right vocabulary. It's incredible how important the right vocabulary is. And it makes you sound like you know what you're talking about, but it also says you've done your research, right? Practicing your interview skills. Even today, when I get a new opportunity, I need to sit down and think, how am I going to answer this? What questions might they ask? What's interesting about this for me? What do I bring to the table? What am I going to learn from it? You've got to look for all those generic questions and ask them of yourself, and then practice them. You don't have to practice them alone. Practicing your pitch, you've got a job, but you want to move forward. You need to practice how you're going to have those conversations. You've got to have those conversations. You've got to tell people you want to move forward, and you've got to do it in a thoughtful way. Now, the thing is, all this practice and right vocabulary, dressing for success, again, you're not on your own, right? I believe in using your community. And I don't think about it as a network. I think about it as a community. And I like to think about my community as concentric circles. I think about my inner circle as friends and family, and then people I've worked with for a long time who know me well, and then further out, people that I can call on and maybe ask for a quick coffee or some advice, and further out. And when I am on a new path, or I have to have a new conversation, I start with friends and family. I start with that friendly face. And I say, where do you see me in 5 years? Or I say, what do you think about this? Does this sound okay? Or I'll just get some feedback and start verbalizing and start practicing having the conversation. Because the more you practice that conversation, the more you hone it and the better it gets. And you can go further and further out and eventually get feedback that's really relevant, because it'll be from, a broader community. And then you can do all sorts of things. You're much more powerful when you do that. But community is not to take. It's about community. Really, it is about community. You nurture as much, you give as much as you take to your community. It's always about balance. We're not counting here, but you nurture it too. So you give back. When people need help, you provide it. When people need support, you provide it. And think about it as the world we live in and the way you'd like the world to work. That's how I like to think about it. It's not transactional. So here's another little exercise for you, a little thought exercise. So are you taking enough risk? Good question. How can you make people see your future potential? What opportunities lie ahead? Are you scanning? Are you looking? Are you thinking? Are you thinking out of the box, maybe? Are you using and nurturing your community, right? These are really important questions because it's how we move forward. Now, broadly, improving your impact. And what this means is having a bigger influence on the world around you. Because, these things matter. This is taking ownership of your career should also be about taking ownership of your impact. And I believe that your impact is most keenly felt around culture and purpose. Culture is what makes us enjoy our job to some extent. And the values that the organization has, the values we bring to the table, and purpose is what gets us out of bed and gets us excited. And you have an impact on these. These aren't owned by the corporate. They are owned as much by the corporate as by you. And so first, choose wisely. When you're looking at a new role, a new opportunity, a new organization, a new boss, look for a good culture. And the great thing about, the great thing about today, but the silver lining from coronavirus is we have concrete examples of how corporates have treated their employees. So look and ask, have they done the right thing for their employees? Have they done the right thing for their community? Have they done the right thing for their clients? Are they broadly just doing the right thing? And you can ask these questions, and they're important questions to ask. So choose wisely. That's the first step. Second, when you're in your job, and this is something women do a lot, people give us all sorts of helpful advice. And one has always stuck out as just the worst ever. Put your head down and do your work. Yes, of course. We all need to put our heads down at some point and get some work done at some point. But work is not about sitting by yourself and just beavering away. That is not what it's about. It is about collaborating, communicating, and contributing. And you need to be doing all three. Collaborate with your team, with other teams. Reach out and make sure that people understand what you're doing and you understand what they're doing and how it might engage. Communicate. Tell people what you're doing. It might help them, it might help you, and contribute to what other people are doing. So important. Yes, you have to get stuff done. Yes, sometimes you need quiet time to think. But if that's all the time, the number of people who say to me, my boss doesn't know what I'm doing. How does your boss not know what you're doing? How is that possible? Right? It's your job to make sure people know what you're capable of. And with that, managing your manager. We've talked about already, we're not great managers in the world of finance. We're getting a little better. There's some focus on this, but we have so far to go. But what that means is you need to take the onus on you to manage your manager. You want a development plan? You need to think about what it looks like. You need to be speaking to your community and developing the conversation you want to have with your boss to get yourself on that path. You need to look at HR and L&D and see what they're offering to up your skills. You need to be asking for some feedback. You need to know what people think your skill gaps are. You need to be telling people that you'd like new opportunities or new engagements. You need people to understand where you're trying to go. And to do that, you need to develop that thought process in your head by using your community before you go and just barge into your boss's office and just blurt it out without having put any thought into it. And you need to have a thoughtful conversation. And, you need to take some ownership. And on this point, when you become a manager, manage wisely, manage thoughtfully, encourage and support people. The better we are at managing other people, the better we are at managing upwards. the better the culture around us gets. And people see you lead by example. Encourage robust discussion. Here's another one. Now, this is really important. I believe organizations can only make good decisions when robust discussion happens. Robust discussion happens when there are diverse perspectives around the table and when they're heard. So when we're not encouraging groupthink, and I don't mean that they have to be nasty, aggressive, different perspectives. I just mean that there have to be different perspectives around the table, and people are prepared to take some criticism or hear a different point of view and discuss and debate. And so the onus on us is to encourage robust discussion. Take some risk and put a different viewpoint on the table, or encourage somebody else's different viewpoint to come to the room. And, look, I know we talk a lot about diversity of thought. It'd be wonderful if diversity of thought were something that we could really easily achieve. It's a hard one to do, but today, I believe we achieve diversity of thought by encouraging more women and minorities to come into the workforce. And we do that because women and minorities have a very different path to tread to achieve anything that they achieve. And it means they have a different perspective. They bring a different perspective to the table. And what that means is that they bring that diversity, right? And look, in the future, it'd be lovely if we didn't have to talk about gender and race and social mobility and LGBTQ and all of these things. It'd be wonderful if we didn't have to talk about that and we could just talk about diversity of thought. We're not there yet. So the thing is, as women, yes, we need to support other women, but we're all different races. So we need to support all races around us. We're from all different backgrounds. So, one of the things I struggled with, particularly when I first started, was I was from a relatively poor background. Everyone around me seemed like they were wealthy. Their parents wore suits to go to work. I felt so out of place. That social mobility thing really resonates with me because, man, even today, I feel a little niggly when people talk about things like golf and tennis. They always felt like rich people sports. So, something I don't do, I've never learned. And I just feel so, in fact, I shun it because I just think it feels so reminiscent of my not fitting in initially. But there are so many ways that we can improve the inclusiveness to get to those wonderful, robust discussions we need. So the next point that you're in charge of is bringing your whole self to the office. This is harder. Some people, it's optional, but this is how we change the world, right? If there's a cause you care about, many organizations give you time off to go and volunteer. Many organizations match donations. Many organizations have a charity of the year that you can put your favorite charity forward. You have a cause you care about and you want to start an employee group to focus on it. It might already exist. Join one or create one. There are so many opportunities when you work in a large organization to really make a difference. So bring your whole self to the office. This is all about taking ownership, right? Taking ownership of the world around you. So here's our last exercise, which is, do you know what culture suits? What values work for you? What are you looking for in an organization or in an employer? Are you collaborating, communicating, and contributing? We all have more to do here. Think and make sure that you're doing as much as you can. Does your manager know where you want to go? I hope so. But if not, you need to work on it. And do you encourage robust discussion? I hope you do. We all have a role to play there. So empowerment is absolutely in your hands. Take ownership. Be strategic. Embrace failure. Use your community. Encourage robust discussion. Bring your whole self to the office. Never, ever give up. I know you can do this. Because, look, I did it, and I had all sorts of stumbling blocks along the way. I know it's possible. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the time that you took. Always happy to hear how you're getting on. I'm going to open it up to questions. And I'm just going to mention before we get to questions that We Are Virtual has, the next webinar is on the 16th. thriving in the new normal. It looks very exciting. And I hope you enjoy that as well. Now I'm going to stop sharing and open it up for questions. Now, I'm looking, I don't see. Can you elaborate on robust discussion, please? Okay, great. When I think about robust discussion, you know, when I think that bad decisions get made, it's often when somebody walks into a room and says, I've got a great idea, and no one is prepared to challenge because they're afraid of, you know, challenging the boss or saying something different, or they're afraid of just bringing a new idea to the table. And so I think just encouraging people to bring, you know, different perspectives to the table, and when they're brought to the table, listening carefully and thinking about them seriously. And then you as well taking that risk to put something different on the table. It's risky and it's scary sometimes, but it's how we get to better and more inclusive conversation and how we make better decisions. Now I see another question. Do you have anyone in your professional career that you look up to? I know you said to think on your own and not compare, but how do you plan your next steps? You know, so I have a number of people who were senior to me who've been able to accomplish things, who are not senior to me, but who've accomplished things that I think are amazing. Or, you know, even some of my students who've come out of university, who've, you know, that I've mentored along the way, that I've just thought, you know, that they've inspired me. And I think I look in so many places for inspiration, and I reach out. And, you know, people I've worked with that I just think are just incredible, that I like their perspective, their values, their judgment. I've asked for help along the way. And, you know, some people I'm still in touch with every now and then. And, you know, mentoring is interesting. It's not therapy. So you're not looking to see the person every day or every week and sit down and have a plan. I mean, the people I mentor broadly, I think of as my mentees, and I hope they think of me as a mentor. They generally come to me, and they're generally my ex-students, so people I got to know slightly through my lecturing, and they come to me when they have big decisions to make, and they've had a bit of thought through, and they just want to, you know, have a sounding board, and it's been great, and I love providing that. And I realized that I've done that with a number of people around me. I call up lots of people and ask for help along the way. Just, what do you think of this? What does this sound like? So I have another question. What is the best way to figure out what my goals are? I feel like I don't know anymore. You know what? I had this issue exactly. I just turned 48 a few days ago. And right before I turned 45, I had just the biggest panic. And I thought, oh my goodness, 45. That is one hop, skip, and a jump away from 50. And then 50 is halfway through, and then I'm going to die. So I'm almost dead. Literally, I had this unbelievable panic that I hadn't done enough. I hadn't achieved enough. And I wasn't moving forward fast enough. And I didn't know what my goals were. And I couldn't articulate them. And I was so frustrated. And I literally sat down and I made a list of friends and family that I could go to and say, where do you see me in 5 years' time? I just asked such a big, broad question. Where do you see me in 5 years' time? What do you think my skill set is? What do you think I could achieve? You know, what's big enough for me? What is good enough? You know, where should I be pointing myself? And those were hard conversations because I felt a bit silly, you know, and it's sort of like opening up your heart and soul, and you feel, you know, what if they laugh? What if they just say, you know, you've done enough and we're tired of hearing from you? What if they, you know, say something that just shocks you and makes you think, oh my goodness, they think that? Wow, giving off the wrong impression. But it's such an important exercise to go through. It was really good for me. And that's a great place to start. So let me see. What should one consider when deciding between staying at a company and pursuing external opportunities? That's a good question. So the thing is that change is sometimes really important, right? And sometimes change kicks you and makes you focus and makes you realize you've got to step up. But, with change comes a bunch of unknowns. So, I left JP Morgan after 8 years and I went to another organization. And I left JP Morgan. We had just gone through a merger with Chase. It was an incredibly difficult and painful thing to go through. And almost all people around me, all the senior people around me left and went to other organizations. And I felt alone and lost and unhappy with the politics. And I realized that, I needed a change. And I got it. And man, did I get a change. Did I regret it? A little bit. It was a really, really tough change. But some very positive things came out. I learned so much in those 2 years, things I hadn't really learned at JP. I'd been at JP Morgan a long time. I'd started my career there. I'd been there 8 years and I had kind of gotten settled and I had gotten comfortable and maybe too comfortable. And going to a new organization meant I had to rebuild my network around the trading floor and around the organization and understand how things got done and figure out how to be effective in a different place. And on day one, I had a team of people reporting to me that 16 people around the world that I thought I was going to bring in a team of people myself. And all of a sudden I had these people. 2 of them pulled me into a room and said, literally day one, 2 guys much older than me said, we know who you are and we don't like reporting to women, and especially women who don't have PhDs, as they both did. And I was so shocked. I learned so much in those 2 years. And with hindsight, I'm glad I did it. But change is hard. Change is hard. The devil you know versus the devil you don't. But, new opportunities can be so exciting as well. But, don't discount the opportunities and the support you might have where you are. So there's a lot to weigh up. Let me go to, how do you make plans or set goals for your career when you're at the junior level and the main focus is still on learning and finding your feet? So it sort of depends on where you are. When you're first starting out, and particularly in some of these really large organizations, if you're going through a training program, there's a path laid out for you. So initially, what you're trying to do is learn as much as you can and just meet as many people as you can, build as broad a network and a community around you as you can. And then eventually, you'll be sitting in a role and you'll be trying to figure out if that role is right for you. And you'll be looking around and saying, this kind of suits me, this kind of doesn't. And you'll just keep looking around. And what you eventually need to do is say, what am I really excited about this role versus what am I finding less exciting? And is there something else out there that if I pointed myself in that direction, I could really shine? That's what you're trying to figure out. That's the way I would think about it. And, I sat on the trading floor and I was trading interest rate derivatives and I didn't love it. If I'm honest. I did it for a few years, but I didn't love it. And yet everybody was telling me what a great opportunity it was. It was a great opportunity, but ultimately it wasn't a great opportunity for me. And ultimately I did get fired. Now I was rehired on the same day by the same firm, but in a different business. And it was credit derivatives. And this was in 97, 98. And the thing about it was a business build opportunity. And I was building an exotic credit derivative business. And I was so excited about that. And man, I flew. That job just I found my feet. And so when you're first starting out, you need to do really well so that people look at you and are prepared to give you opportunities because they can see you've demonstrated that you're prepared to work hard, you're prepared to learn. But, if it's not right for you, it's not right for you. And that's okay. You need to be figuring out what the next opportunity is. Do you think having a mentor is a good move, and how to get one outside of your organization? So I absolutely, I don't have one official mentor. I could list about 20 people that I have called up at some point in time and asked for advice. And so I don't really subscribe necessarily to the formal mentor route. However, I know that there are a number of organizations that provide mentors. I don't know if We Are the City does, but there's another organization called E2W. And they have a mentorship program for women in finance, so you should take a look at them. There are lots of opportunities to get mentors outside of your organization, and that's probably a pretty important thing. Women on boards, I'm an ambassador for them, and I was asked to mentor a woman specifically, and it's been a great relationship, and that's been a formal relationship. So there we meet 6 times, 1 hour each, at her discretion. She chooses when we meet and what the topic is, but I've committed to that, and that's been a great relationship, and we were well suited, we were well matched, and that's what you're looking for. So good luck with that. I don't have a craving for moving up the ladder, so to say, and I'm quite happy in my current role. How should I proceed when planning a 5-year professional development plan with this in mind? Well, look, everybody has different goals. Everybody has different aspirations, and you need to find your happy place. However, what I will, so I have, I am not saying that everybody needs to be climbing that ladder, that greasy pole that some people talk about, at all. I didn't climb the ladder, frankly. I wasn't very good at it, and I wasn't inspired to climb the ladder. But when I left the organization, I was quite inspired to do more. So, that's one point I would make. The second I would make is that I think that, you have to keep in mind that skill sets and what we need people to do, going forward is going to change. So while you may be very happy doing what you're doing or at the level you're at, you absolutely need to be making sure that your skill set is improving all the time, because technology, especially now, coronavirus has shown us all that technology is the thing we have to focus on. And we are rapidly moving down that path much faster than we were before. And what that means is that jobs, skill sets, they're all going to change. And so you need to keep current, is what I would advise. How do you have discussions with your manager regarding actions you want to take to own your career if their mindset may be different than that discussed here? Look, as I said, not all managers are great. And, you need to understand what your manager sees in you. Because, what I would say is that there may be opportunities outside of your team, right? There may be opportunities in the broader organization you're in. And if your manager is not supporting you or not saying the right things about you, you need to understand that. And so you need to have that conversation that says, look, I just need to understand how you see me in 3 years' time, and what skill gaps you think I have, and how I could be a better, whatever it is, that, better team player, or how could I improve my, do you feel I need to improve my communication? How can I move forward? And that's the conversation you need to have. And look, if your manager is not very good at that, then you need to have that conversation with, start with your friends and family, start asking those questions, and then there'll be people at work that know you well, that are prepared to give you some feedback. Ask, right? And figure out what your gaps are and what skill sets you need to add, and then go on a journey and get there. And if you are finding that you're being blocked because your manager's not seeing the changes you're making, but other people do see them, and that's important, then you may need to move. I mean, those are the facts, unfortunately. How can you identify your potential if you're lacking confidence in what you're currently doing? Honestly, I'm the most insecure person I know. Every day is a struggle for me. Every talk I give, I beat myself up afterwards and I think, oh, I can't believe I said that. Gosh, that was terrible. And I beat myself up all the time. I am the worst. I go into meetings and I come out and I just think, oh, I cannot believe I said that. And I've been this way my whole life. It's who I am. And I've come to accept it. But I've also come to, learn that my community is where I get my support. And it's kind of reinforces me. And, my husband, for example, I joined the Morgan Stanley International Board. And I had 16 interviews to get on that board, right? So they clearly knew that they wanted me. But on the first day, I was terrified. And I thought, why have they asked me to be on this board? Look at all these amazing people around this table. I don't know what I'm doing here. I didn't say a word. First, I didn't understand most of what was going on. It's a lot of vocabulary, organization structure. I didn't know. And so I needed to learn. But honestly, I then went home and I said to my husband, oh my goodness, this is just, and he said, Terri, honestly, stop it. You can do this. Just read the papers, learn, right? Figure it out. And I did. 6 months in, I got a call from the chairman and he said, look, Terri, we need to chat. And I just thought, oh, he's going to fire me. I'm terrible. And he called and I was preparing myself for the, you suck conversation. And he said, Terri, you've just been so incredible. The executives really think that you should be chairing the risk committee. Shock, honestly shocked. And then I said, well, let me think about it. And then I said to my husband, God, I've never chaired a risk committee before. Can I? And he said, Terri, can you do it? Can you do this? And I said, yes, I can do this. I just have to figure. And he said, okay, geez, just stop. Just do it. Just do it. I know you can do this. And, you sometimes just need that go-to person who kind of gives you a little slap that says, come on, pull it together. I know you can do this. You just find the mechanisms to find your confidence. We all need them. I am hugely insecure every day. And I just need those moments of confidence building every day. Now, let me see. I want to move from the corporate world to work with small companies, startups, and I've been told my CV is too scary. How can I change the language so it doesn't scare people outside the corporate world? Well, that's really interesting. When I first started my business, I had a meeting with a client, a small business, and I was pitching myself as a consultant. And I went in, and it was me and another woman, and we were pitching to work together on a particular issue. And I went in, and I just gave this wonderfully slick presentation. And the woman gave me feedback afterwards. She said, Terri, they want to work with me, but they don't want to work with you. And I was like, oh, you kidding? Come on, look at my background. I'm JP Morgan. And she said, you just sound like such a slick banker to them. And, it took me a while to figure out what that meant. So it is possible to, you become institutionalized and you do certain things and you use certain language and vocabulary. What I would encourage you to do is when people say your CV is scary, ask specifically, what do they mean by that? And, what do they mean? Is it the vocabulary? Is it, are you focused on, one thing that bankers particularly do is they focus on titles. I was global head of credit derivative structuring for the, and I also ran the EMEA, blah, 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 blah. And it's all this really technical vocabulary. And sometimes that's very off-putting. What did you actually do? And that might help. What did you do? What skill set are you bringing to the table? That can make you approachable. Now I'm going to take one last question here because I think we're going to run out of time. I want to move. No, I've done that already. I'm not a native speaker, so this is my biggest obstacle to achieved career success. I'm dreaming of, as this is so important to be a great speaker, presenter, what would be grateful for any advice. It's a great question, and thank you for asking. Thank you for all these questions. Honestly, I think, if I'm very honest with myself, I've got some talent in speaking. However, what I have found is that if I don't prepare, if I don't really think through what I'm trying to say, and if I don't practice, it doesn't go so well. And it doesn't go as well as I'd like it to go. And so practice, practice, practice is all I can say. Prepare, prepare, prepare. And unbelievably, the more you practice, the easier it gets, answering questions, speaking off the cuff, just talking about things. And again, you can use your community, you can use your mirror, that's fine too. You can use you can record yourself and see what it sounds like. And then think, would I like to hear that or not? So I've done that a number of times. Anyway, look, thank you so much, everybody. Amazing questions. I really appreciate all of them. I'm sorry I couldn't answer everything. I'm just looking at the time. I think this was supposed to be 45 minutes and we've gone a little bit over. But thank you so much. I really appreciate your paying attention and all the questions. And I wish you all the best of luck. I know you can do this. I know you can do it because I did. And everything's possible, no matter where you're starting from. So good luck. And I look forward to seeing all the amazing things you do. All right. Cheers. Thank you.